Welcome to another week's analysis behind the news. Let's begin by talking about Egypt's new constitution. According to the Wall Street Journal, Egypt's Islamists set to dominate new constitution. Isn't it interesting that nation after nation, when they have a change in leadership, they've got to have a new constitution? What's wrong with the old one? If it was a real good constitution, you'd think they'd want to keep it. The United States Constitution is something that has not changed, basically, a few amendments for the last 230 years or so, because it's a good document. It's a sound law. It is something that limits the power of government. Now we're getting away from it, and as Jay Leno says, why not give them our Constitution? We're not using it anyway. That joking aside, and it's not very funny really when you think about it, the United States Constitution has done us very well for a couple of centuries. But it is interesting, it is about the only Constitution that has been in power or in play that long because of its soundness. The wisdom of our forefathers was amazing. But at any rate, new constitution for Egypt going to be written by Islamists. That is a normal thing in other countries other than the United States when it comes to a constitution. Speaking of the Constitution, this article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal, U.S. offers concessions on Afghan night raids. The interesting thing about this is that while we're debating in this country whether or not we should have warrants and so on and so forth in the war on terror for TAPs and raids and that sort of thing on terrorists, one of the concessions that our government apparently is going to give to the Afghanis is that it will require warrants to be issued before operations get the green light for these midnight raids that they've been pulling over there. So we're going to protect people's rights in Afghanistan. The United States, that's something else. Speaking of rights, China reins in chatter as rumors run wild. Apparently there was some sort of a coup in the palace guard, so to speak, of communist China, and they don't want the Chinese people talking about it. So they've been censoring all the chats that have been going back and forth in the social networks to make sure that none of these particular chats, tweets, whatever, reach their destination. And so they're talking about how the Chinese are getting around the censorship by using new words as euphemisms for existing words so that they can talk about the situation. Whereas in Cuba, they don't allow you to chat at all. The social networks are shut down in Cuba because they don't want the outside information coming in, and they don't even want Cubans talking to Cubans. This does not bode well if you take a look at some of the things that our government is trying to do in the relationship to shutting down certain websites, certain organizations, certain individuals who may be labeled terrorists or what have you, from chatting with other people on the social networks. They already do this in the communist countries. A lot of talk about starting to do that in this country. All for the right reasons. They always do that to fool people into any little snippet of the change in law, the change in rights, in order to get us to believe that, yeah, we need to do this. We need to curtail the rights of the people in the name of terrorism, in the name of security, in the name of drugs, in the name of this, name of that, name of the other. But it always ends up that we have less and less freedom in the long run. The one thing that I wanted to end up on is that according to the Financial Times of last Tuesday, it says, BRICS to debate creation of common bank. Now we've discussed what BRICS is before, and that's the alliance between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. We have stated that these are basically communist governments who are reforming the Soviet bloc. Now they are doing it and codifying it even more. They not only want to form a common bank in competition with the World Bank and that sort of thing, controlled out of New York, But they want to formalize their grouping by building common institutions and exploring opportunities for lending. So basically what they're doing is bringing back the old Soviet empire, calling it something different. They all have communist governments. Now let's reiterate, Putin and company controls Russia, KGB, China, obviously, openly a communist nation. South Africa, the South African Congress, their leaders are always at the communist conventions each year, standing under the hammer and sickle, giving the communist salute from its first leader under the new regime, Nelson Mandela, and on from that point. The National Congress in India has always been a communist organization. And so you have that sort of thing being kept secret from the American people, that these are really communists. Brazil, I forgot to mention, the current head of Brazil, the president, is a former head of a communist terrorist organization that used to blow people up and assassinate them. But you see, they don't have the draconian communism that they once had in these countries outside of China, simply because they do not want to wake up the world as to what's really going on. As long as they can maintain de facto control over their people without having a policeman on every corner and throwing people into a gulag and concentration camps, that sort of thing, that's what they do. And they do it slowly, surely, a step at a time, so that they don't wake up the people as to what's really going on. But it is going on. They're rebuilding their structure. And we've said before on these broadcasts, 95% of the population, when you measure it by population, of South America live under communist rule. There's 4 countries in Latin America, all along the northern tier, between Colombia and Venezuela, that are not communist leaders, do not have communist leaders. The rest of them do. Whether you're talking about Venezuela, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, etc. They all are communists. Take it up online, take a look at it, research who these people are, the parties that they're the head of, the coalitions that they have formed, and see for yourself whether or not these are not Marxist organizations. You will discover that they are. You're not reading about it in your newspaper. But the rebuilding of the communist empire has been going on subtly underneath your nose while they've been telling you that communism is dead. It is not dead. It's very much alive and growing. And BRICS is just a codification of the major communist countries coming together as a new Soviet bloc, something that will be concerning us as we go down the road. But as we know, we have socialism at home as well. And it gives an excuse to all these other countries. We give them foreign aid and everything else. All that has to stop. We have to become Americans, look to our own Constitution for our own liberty, serve as the example to the rest of the world, become an industrial bastion once again within this free system. And it will bode much better for the rest of the world. Until next week, we'll see you then.